It may be that there simply is no accounting for the laws of logic.
Okay. I've had many conversations with Brenda about the fundamental basic laws of logic. And if you're expecting to have a coherent conversation about the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, the law of excluded middle with Brenda, you're wasting your time, because all Brenda does is come back with non sequiturs and statements that muddy the waters. That's why there will be no productive conversation with Brenda about, for example, the law of non-contradiction.
I think that's pretty self-evident.
We're discovering that right now.
I think it's pretty evident with the law of identity.
Yeah, all you have to do is ask Brenda: do you employ the law of non-contradiction when you reason?
Sure, of course I do.
Okay, is the law of non-contradiction absolute and universal?
It's an axiom that is self-evident.
I didn't ask you if it was an axiom. I said, is it true at all times and all places?
You're asking for an a posteriori justification for an a priori axiom.
Notice everybody that I asked a very simple, clear, and circumspect question, and all I got was gobbledygook back.
That's not gobbledygook. The words actually mean
Brenda,
something.
you do it every time you converse on the subject. So I'll ask you one more time, and I'll make it clear to everybody in the room. Is the law of non-contradiction true at all times and places?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay. How are you able to determine that that is the case?
You're asking for an a posteriori justification.
I'm not interested in nomenclature.
Truth.
I am not interested in nomenclature or you throwing down technical terms. How were you able to determine?
But you know what those
law
words
of non-contradiction. I'd like to finish my statement. When I ask you this very simple and clear question, I would like the response to be nomenclature free so that we don't muddy the waters. So, how are you able to determine that the law of non-contradiction is true at all times and all places?
You, Dawkins, know what the word a posteriori means.
I am not interested in nomenclature. Please give it to me where a ninth grader could understand the answer.
A priori, and that is apart from experience. Now, if you want to justify logical truths along a posteriori lines, that is, rather than arguing that they're self-evident, but rather arguing that there's evidence for them that we can find in experience or by observation.
Your question is malformed because
no, it's not malformed. It is not malformed. You see, this is why I get irritated with you and why I'm irritated right now. I asked you a question that is simple and clear. It is not a malformed question, and you are calling it a malformed question because you want to dodge the question. Here's the question again. Is the law of non-contradiction true in all times and all places? And you responded to me that you said it seems to be. And I said, good. How are you able to determine that the law of non-contradiction holds at all times and all places? Please give me an answer that is nomenclature free.
Because it is self-evident and self-attesting.
Okay, good. How is it self-evident halfway across the universe?
It simply is.
No, I didn't ask you. Well, how were you able to determine that?
It's a self-attesting fact.
How is it self-attesting? It is not a personal being that can communicate. So how are you able to determine that halfway across the universe, the law of non-contradiction always holds?
Asking me for a justification of the laws of logic, my response is that they are self-evident, a priori.
You're repeating yourself now. I heard your answer the first time that it is self-evident. How is it evident to you that the law of non-contradiction holds halfway across the universe? How is that self-evident?
It is apparent. Self-evident simply means it is evident to my perception.
How can you perceive something halfway across the universe?
All I can say is that it's an a priori, self-evident.
No, you just told me it was evident to your senses.
Fact.
You just told me that the law of non-contradiction is evident to your senses.
It's evident to my reason.
Okay. So in other words, is this just something that you believe?
No, it's something that I intuit.
Okay, but you told me it was self-evident. So if it's self-evident, why would you need to intuit it?
I think those are interchangeable.
Intuition is a misunderstood word too, an intuitive grasp of it or something. It's misinterpreted as a hunch.
Right, or
a
as
gut feeling.
something emotional like women's intuition. That's not what the word means when philosophers use it. I wish there were another word that they could use, but it's hard to think of another word. Maybe rational insight would be a better word. It's the sort of way in which you know that if P implies Q and P, then Q. Mm-hmm. Or if either A or not A, that is just, you have a rational insight into that, or a rational intuition that those laws of logic are true.
Yeah. And isn't it funny that we say, I can see that, and we're not talking about our physical eyes, our vision. We're talking about something of what you're saying there, this internal grasping, this knowledge, this incorrigibility.
Yeah. We use that kind of language, don't we? When we say you can just see that the laws of logic are true.
I'd like everyone to know I could go on for the next 20 minutes with these simple, clear, and circumspect questions, and all we will get is gobbledygook back and nomenclature-filled answers that simply dodge and muddy the waters. How can something be self-evident halfway across the universe? And then Brenda says, I'm not done yet. Brenda said that it was self-evident to his senses. Well, it's not self-evident to your senses. Then you told me that you reason that the law of non-contradiction holds. Well, how did you reason that that's the case?
They are, the process of reasoning is to take certain axioms and begin with them. That's how reasoning is done. That's how reasoning is done.
How are you able to use your reason? How are you able to employ your reasoning to determine that it is the case that the law of non-contradiction holds halfway across the universe? How are you able to determine that it is the case, not that you merely believe that is the case?
I don't know how to answer you other than to simply reiterate that they are a priori truths.
And what does that to a ninth grade? How is it self-evident that that's the case? How? Is it self-evident to your senses?
I don't know.
Well, you just told me it's self-evident. If it's not self-evident to your senses, then what other means would it be self-evident that the law of non-contradiction holds halfway across the universe?
A self-evident truth, that's the kind of truth like 2 + 1 = 3, or if all men are mortal and Socrates is a man, then Socrates is mortal. That is truth that you can just see to be necessary, like it couldn't possibly be false under any conditions.
Didi, I know you watch my videos, so here's another question for you to dodge. You think that the laws of logic must be justified a posteriori, instead of being self-evident in an a priori way. So, what would a violation of the laws of logic look like? What exactly would we be looking for? If I said I saw a violation of the laws of logic, would you accept that?
You're wasting your time asking me a question. How were you able to determine that it is the case, as opposed to you merely believing it? How are you able to determine that some things are actually impossible? How could you determine that?
Internally valid.
When I was in the 8th grade, I was shown the basic axioms for Euclidean geometry, and I
You're not answering my. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in geometry.
I simply
I'm interested in you answering my question.
I simply apprehended them.
Okay, so in other words, you assert.
Dawkins, can you hear me?
I'm not interested in talking with you right now.
No, I know that, but other people are interested.
Well, I'll just turn your microphone down. Okay, I'll just wrap it up here saying
other people that
I have asked Brenda a very simple and clear question, and I get a discussion about what.
Yeah, we heard that. We heard you.
Hey, Bree, I'm talking right now. Please don't interrupt.
I know you're not in charge of me. So how about you?
Okay, good. I just muted your microphone. So you see, Brenda cannot answer a simple and basic question.
Really?
All we get is you give verbal gobbledygook, and you see this is why it's a waste of time having a conversation with Brenda. Absolute waste of time.
Okay, you've established now that. Can we have a different conversation?
Okay, I'm not Brenda. Please don't address me. Okay, thank you. See, there you go. Have fun talking with Brenda, everybody.
A priori is not gobbledygook. Hey. I understood it perfectly when I was in the 8th grade.
Dawkins.
All right.
Thank you. Okay.
I got rid of those two.
Well, I didn't think Brenda was trying to answer questions.
Well, Dawkins has a way of trying to dominate conversation.
Yeah.
That's Dawkins, kind of makes me embarrassed to be called a presuppositionalist. I'm sorry, but
I agree.
I could be a transvestite.